joining me today on Plow and Pantry, you guys. I am in the middle of a freezer challenge, and if you have not seen any of those videos, I will link them for you. But I found in my indoor freezer some beef soup bones that I forgot about. So I decided to go ahead and make bone broth, and I always make that in my Instant Pot. I used to make it in a crock pot, but which you can do. You can also do it on the stovetop. But to do true bone broth, you need to have like 24 hours, but in the Instant Pot and pressure cooker, you can totally do it in 2 to 3 hours. I normally use 2 hours, but because I was throwing these in straight from the freezer, I added an extra hour. There is just water in there and a little bit of apple cider vinegar, a tiny bit, just to help draw the minerals out of the bones. About between like 2.5 quarts of water. It's about what fits in there. And that was just fine for that application. When it was finished, I took it out. That's what it looks like. And what I do here is I take a large bowl, and I have a colander that has handles that help it kind of sit up on it, and I drain out the bone broth. This makes it easy to get any bits of skin or meat or gristle or bone or anything out of the broth, so you just have a smooth broth to can with. So that's what I'm doing here, is pouring it out and letting it sink through. Now, of course, it's too much with that colander sitting in there to get all, like, it comes up into the colander, but you'll see in a second, I'm just going to pull it up and let it finish draining out. See, and once that is done, then I can discard that part, and I'm left with just the broth over in the big bowl. Now, I like to transition out of the bowl once I get my canning jars ready, out of the bowl into a pitcher, because the pitcher makes it easier for me to pour the broth in. It is a bit tricky getting out of a bowl into a pitcher, though. You'll see that I spill a little bit. It looks like more on camera than it was in real life. But I pour what I can fit into that pitcher. See, it looks like a lot. It was really not that much on the counter, but I'm often messy when I'm cooking and stuff. So I get that into the jars. These are pint-sized jars. Any meat product needs a 1-inch headspace, and that is like the bottom of the neck of the jar, like the bottom of the threads. So I don't really use a measurer for this. I know where it is. You will see me correct a little bit later. My view is different. Some of them were slightly low. But it's just easier to pour anything that's liquid that you're canning. It's easier to pour it into the jars with something that has a spout, like a large measuring cup or a pitcher. I do the same thing with jelly, that kind of thing. So then I am getting the rest of the broth in there. I do not can all of the broth that I made today. I put 2 quarts of it in the fridge for soup later this week, and then these 4 pints are what I canned to go in the long-term pantry down in my basement. So here I have brought over some vinegar and paper towel, and I'm getting rings and lids out of a drawer there. Having to fight a little bit. That drawer needs to be resituated so that it can be easier to get to the things that I want. I have a combination here of regular mouth and wide mouth jars, and so I was having to find different size lids and different size rings, not just 4 of the same. So once I get them all, what I do is take my paper towel and I'm dipping it into, this is where you see me top off. I realized from a different view that I needed a tiny bit more in some of the jars. But I dip my paper towel into a little dish of vinegar, clean the rim, switch the spot on the towel, clean the rim. I'm really careful with meat products because they have fat in them, and any extra fat or oil on the rim can prevent a seal or make it siphon more and just generally cause problems that you don't want to have. So I like to use the vinegar, use a clean towel on each jar, stuff like that. Getting the lids and rings on fingertip tight. It might look sometimes like I'm doing a little bit harder than fingertip tight, but I'm not. I occasionally have wrist or palm pain issues, and so I do know what it feels like when it's the fingertip tight section just from so many years of canning. So I get them on, and then I start cleaning things up to get those into the canner. So I needed to get the Instant Pot out of my way, and then I brought over my electric pressure canner. I'm only doing 4 pints, and so I didn't want to get out my giant, heavy All-American canner and go through the process of that. It is fairly easy to use, but it's also heavy and it's more time consuming than the electric pressure canner. So when I have small batches, I really like to use this one. You have to use them at your own risk though, because they are controversial, I should say. So I get these in there. I poured in my extra vinegar that was left over after the lids. I usually do that because I have hard water. And then for pressure canning, this one in the directions takes 8 cups of water, which is 2 quarts. So I'm pouring that in. I'm using hot water because my jars were hot, my broth was hot, and you want to keep things about the same temperature. That helps prevent siphoning. If the broth was cold and my jars were cold, I would have used cold or room temperature water. It just helps to have it all the same temperature as far as the end product goes. So what's in that pitcher right there is what I end up putting off camera. I put it into 2 quart jars and put it in my refrigerator for later meals this week. So then I get my lid on here. I'm setting it to exhaust. That's how this works. It gets that 10-minute steam stream, and then you switch it to sealed. And because these are pints and it's a meat product, it takes 75 minutes. So that's what I'm getting on there, getting it started. And then when it's done, I like to let it sit overnight. So I'm pulling these out the next morning. I just feel like I get better seals if I don't, the directions say you can do it after 1 hour when the pressure is done, and I just find that if I let it go all the way down to room temperature and not be warm at all, I have a better product in the end. So that's how I make my bone broth, or at least this time, and thank you for joining me. I hope to see you again on future videos.